A tough loss to New Jersey, and the NHL trade deadline is looming. The first big defensive domino has moved. We're going to talk all about it on the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast.
You are Locked On Utah Hockey Club, your daily podcast on the Utah Hockey Club, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us here in the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast. We appreciate you making us your first listen each and every single day when it comes to the Utah Hockey Club. I'm veteran NHL voice Tom Callahan, joined by longtime team analyst Robyn Leaño. We are here to talk about the week ahead for, well, not only the UHC, but Robyn, everybody. We're going to talk about this New Jersey loss here in a second, but just to let everybody know, the trade deadline is looming on March 7th, and so this kind of everything that happens this week, whether it's in Utah or any other franchise, is going to be overanalyzed to death. So I think our listeners and our viewers need to be prepared for that.
Oh, they definitely need to be prepared for that. And you know, it's a week in which everything goes crazy, Tom. And it's interesting because I joke about this all the time with everybody. It's when I reactivate a list that I put together on like Twitter, where it's all like the big NHL media personnel, just so I could and I'm like doom scrolling and refreshing through that all of it in the last couple hours on the actual trade deadline day, because it's crazy stuff happens. Really crazy stuff happens during this week, and I always want to be one of the first to know.
Yes. Absolutely, I agree. I'll have it pinned on every possible coverage just to see how things are going to go down. But first, before we get to the trade deadline, tough loss against New Jersey. And so coming out of the weekend here, it was a 1-1 game heading into the third period. And first of all, congratulations to Mikhail Sergachev, new career high in goals, 11. Scored at 10:03 of the second period. That tied the game at 1. And Liam O'Brien, by the way, was 2/3 of the way to a Gordie Howe, had an assist on this goal, had a fight in the game, actually was named the game's third star. So nice to see Spicy Tuna getting some love there. But Robyn, we talk about the opening and the closing of periods. And in the third period, what happens? New Jersey comes out and they score 14 seconds into the period. They add one later. It's a 3-1 final. But boy, that just crushes you, especially on home ice. I know the team's tired. I know it's 5 games in 8 days. Andre Tourigny talked about it, talked about how good the Devils are, and they are. They're a good hockey team. Their goaltender was playing out of his mind against Utah, and Utah kind of seems to have been running into that lately, except for whatever reason, Marc-Andre Fleury, who is an actual Hall of Famer, didn't put in a Hall of Fame performance. But those are just killers. The last minute of a period, the first minute of a period, the shift immediately after a goal, it bites Utah again.
Mm-hmm. Those are really crucial moments, Tom. And it's interesting because what happens when that happens for the Utah Hockey Club is it shoots their confidence. And instantly you can see what happens. They kind of go into a shell. They kind of and they kind of return to those fundamental mistakes. And they at that point they feel like they're chasing.
And they, pardon me, they did end up out shooting New Jersey in the third period, but still down 2-1. And then, as you say, especially when you're down 3-1, when Lazar scores at 12:44, now you are chasing, right? Yeah. Now you're really trying to push. Now you're trying to make something happen. They did have a late power play in the third. Couldn't make anything happen, even with the empty net. And again, take nothing away from the performance. Nico Dawes, not the guy you had on your bingo card to come up huge, but played so well. 24 saves on 25 shots. And another great game without a result for Karel Vejmelka, as he ends up seeing 29. And it hurts. 26 of 29 for Veg. He doesn't come up with the win. Utah's scoring just wasn't there in this particular game. But it's kind of funny, Robyn. I was reading in a couple of different media sources after this game. Just a few people were questioning which goaltender Utah should actually go with, suggesting that perhaps they might not have confidence in Vejmelka after this game. And I'm thinking to myself, what the hell game were you watching? Or what team have you been watching? Because Veg has been outstanding this year.
I mean, all you gotta do is like, I mean, the eye test is obviously like I don't even have to look at the stats. I look at the eye test of how well a goaltender can perform in between the pipes, and Vejmelka has, passed the eye test even more so. And even on paper, Vejmelka is the better goaltender. And so if when you mentioned that to me, like if those that were not watching on YouTube, I instantly kind of gave that like confused and puzzled look on my face when Tom explained that there are actually people that believe that. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what?
That was me reading their thoughts, I'll call them. Yeah, I mean, look, I understand not everybody covering the Utah hockey team is a longtime hockey person, right? Has been around the game for a long time. But that's kind of mind-blowing to me. And again, I'm not saying anything bad about Connor Ingram and saying this, but what I am saying is if you are at all suggesting that Veggie has not had an excellent season and that they might not have confidence in him, that's just way off base.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's one thing to question, who the goaltender will be, post trade deadline, because again, there could be so many different things that happen this week, right? And see how all that turns out. And again, we're going to get more into that later in the show. But it's another to talk about, like, wondering if there's enough confidence in who has clearly been the best goalie for this team this season.
Yeah. And to me, again, I think when you're talking about the Utah Hockey Club getting a chance to win every night, he gave him a chance to win against New Jersey. And again, the scoring just wasn't quite there. And that's what you need out of your goaltender. And so, you know what, probably, I think Veg would probably like to have that goal that opened the third period back. But it just was a quick play off the rush in transition. Great shot from the wing. That's going to happen. I mean, it was a well-placed shot, right? But so those goals happened, but still, Utah just wasn't scoring. They weren't capitalizing as much on their opportunities. And so now, Robyn, if you look at the schedule here, they get through that run. And now that we're into March, they're off until Thursday. And that's a 5:00 Mountain Time start against the Red Wings. Then they go Thursday, Detroit, Friday, Chicago, which is 6:30 Mountain Time for a quick 2-game swing out of town. Then they're back against the Leafs Monday, the 10th, and Anaheim Wednesday, the 12th, before going out on a 3-game road trip. You've got Seattle, Vancouver, Edmonton, 3-game homestand, Buffalo, Tampa, Detroit, and then 3-game road trip again. That is Tampa, Florida, Chicago. And that is a busy March for this Utah Hockey Club. It's not as if they have one long homestand or even one long road trip. It is bouncing back and forth, which I imagine can also put a little stress on them.
This team is going to go through the ringer, and it's really going to test the stamina of this team. And I think stamina is the correct term, because a lot of different stamina, mental stamina, physical stamina, all of that, because they're going through all of that, as you mentioned. Barely going to get enough time to really breathe and take time to yourself, because it's just going to be back and forth nonstop through this final stretch. And it really is going to test, because as a lot of people, as some people might say, is, hey, when the playoffs hit, it's going to be like that, right? It's going to be nonstop. Can you handle that? The good ones can. They might get a little bit tired, maybe at one point. Oh, every team gets a little bit, especially if you get to the playoffs and go seven games. But
right,
I mean, that's kind of what we're looking for, right? You're looking to, hey, if your team can handle that, you could probably handle the intensity of the playoffs.
And Robyn, the reason I mention that this week is difficult, being in Detroit and then Chicago Thursday, Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Friday is the trade deadline. I have a thought on whether or not that may actually accelerate Utah's movement here, on top of what has already happened. The first domino has fallen. Nostradamus had forsooth Seth Jones to Florida. We're going to talk about what that means for Utah's D and their trade deadline here in just a moment. And the show is brought to you in part by Wonderful Pistachios. Are you looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, which gives you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you keep fuller longer. Personally, I'm a no shells guy. I like it because it's a great grab and go snack for the busy days. You just grab the bag. I'm snacking at my desk. And you know, I like to snack at my desk. We talk about this. Just middle of the workday. I don't work a normal 9 to 5 like everybody else does, right? In the world of sports, it's different. Sometimes you just got to grab what's around you, grab a little handful. Pistachios, fantastic. So Wonderful Pistachios. I love it. Always my go-to. But hey, if you like cracking open the shell, you like that, it is kind of a satisfying little snap, right? Well, the in-shell option, that's a classic favorite. So I'll tell you what, the no shells, great for the grab and go ease. And when you're running like between meetings or heading, even back and forth, end of the day to the apartment or the house, or maybe you're grabbing the kids, maybe the kids need a snack. Wonderful Pistachios are the snack that works as hard as you do. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more.
And today's episode is also brought to you by Post District. Discover Post District, home to 4 of Salt Lake's newest and most stylish apartment buildings: The Register, Post House North, Post House South, and 801 Flats. Each residence offers its own unique take on luxury urban living, with features like waterfall kitchen islands, floor-to-ceiling windows, vaulted ceilings, and spacious patios, as well as walk-in closets. Enjoy premium amenities, including the city's largest residential gym, a year-round pool, golf simulator, massive TV wall for sports watch parties, and more, all anchored by a one-of-a-kind community. Step outside and find yourself immersed in Salt Lake's hottest dining and nightlife scene, with award-winning spots like Urban Hill, Mencho Ramen, Level Crossing, Melancholy Wine Bar, and Sunday's Best, just steps away. Whether you're looking for a studio, 1, 2, 3 bedroom, or penthouse, find your perfect home today. Visit liveatpost.com or call 801-590-6247. Mention this ad for an exclusive incentive.
So Robyn and I, I'll be in the golf simulator, but then we'll be at that giant screen for all the locked on. We'll do our own little locked on parties for the Utah Hockey Club games. That sounds fantastic. I'm in. Let's do it.
Oh, it's amazing.
Absolutely. Well, I want to talk about the trade deadline. So again, let's reiterate here: the NHL trade deadline, 3 p.m. Eastern time on Friday. So you'll see trades coming in after that, but the paperwork, as they used to say, the facts,
it needs to be in the system.
Has to be in the system by 3 o'clock. Now I think, Robyn, it's an email. I don't know anyone that still uses a fax. But yeah, the trade email's got to be in by 3 p.m., which is actually easier to prove with the timestamp. So, but that said, that's how it's going to go. Now, the first defensive domino has indeed fallen. And Robyn, I think there's players that are the logjam players at every position. And I think Seth Jones was the defensive logjam, and he moved faster than I actually thought he would, but he ended up in a place I thought he would. He goes to the Florida Panthers, and I think it's a good fit. And Florida may not be done. They did get Chicago to retain a little bit of the salary. They gave up Spencer Knight, who I know they valued highly as a goaltender of the future. Yeah. But let's face it, Florida is about winning cups right now. They still have Bob, who they hope is playoff Bob once again this year. They needed a right shot power play defenseman. They went out and got one. So now, depending on, again, potential Tkachuk injury issue woes, whether or not he'll be able to come back, they may not be done this year. And Sam Bennett's name keeps floating out there. But I think Florida has really made it line up for everybody else now with Seth Jones moving. He was probably the biggest ticket item out there. And I think, and the reason I bring this up, how it applies to Utah Hockey Club is because Utah has some very movable defensive contracts. And the two guys we keep talking about, I would love an Ian Cole on my team for a deep playoff run, but I would also love an Olli Maatta. And I think those are two really good, very experienced Stanley Cup playoff veterans with, I'll say, affordable contracts, 3 and 3.1 million. I don't think those are bad, and they expire this year. So I know Cole's a little older, Maatta's a little younger, but I think they both will substantially improve a blue line. And I honestly feel like Utah Hockey Club is open to shopping one, if not both, and potentially maybe even a little bit more than that.
Oh yeah, I think certainly those are the ones I think you'd probably look at the most out of the ones you mentioned, at least taking a look at who to trade away from that defensive core. And I'm glad you mentioned Maatta, because I think what a lot of people kind of don't consider all the time. Maybe you do if you're kind of as well invested into the breakdown of trade trees and all stuff like that. But I was just taking not even all that invested, just taking a look at, hey, Utah Hockey Club acquired Olli Maatta earlier this season off of a trade. That was at the time for a third round draft pick in this upcoming draft. What will be interesting, Tom, to see is if Maatta is an option to trade. What's the value boost at this point? Now we're going into the trade deadline. Essentially, would Utah flip Maatta for better value than what they got him for?
Well, yes, absolutely they would, because teams at this time of year are going to pay more than they ordinarily would.
Yes.
So that's not a question. I mean, would I love to see a first rounder come back for Maatta? Oh, absolutely. That'd be fantastic. But again, Utah Hockey Club, look, he's a key piece of the puzzle for them too right now. And a couple of things need to be talked about here. And this is the reason why Vejmelka's name will still come up on some trade pundits' boards, because until we have a press conference saying he signed an extension, or we have an announcement saying that they can't agree on an extension, then we don't know. Yeah. Same thing. They could be working on an extension with a Maatta behind the scenes right now, or talking to Ian Cole, or maybe they're talking about where they want to go, and saying, look, guys, we're going to try to move you. This is the reality of it, right? It's a business at the end of the day, but Utah is still a little bit on the outside looking in. The way the standings break down right now for Utah, they still have to leapfrog. And now St. Louis has played one more game, but has jumped in front by a point of the Utah Hockey Club after they ended up losing that game and to New Jersey. And so now you got St. Louis in front of you, Vancouver in front of you, Calgary in front of you. You have to jump over all three of those teams. And I know it's only a 2-point gap, but that's tough. That's tough to do.
It really is tough to do. I think, especially too, when once again we consider, now it's no longer by a whole lot, but like I said, like Calgary and Vancouver still have that extra game in hand, which that extra game does mean a lot. It really can make the difference between a team, making it at this point, especially at the trade deadline coming up. It's like things can dictate which direction a team is going to go in. Like, hey, are we confident we can make it, or do we just want to kind of just not necessarily press the reset button for Utah, or like a soft reset in this case? But what the term I'm looking for here is to say, hey, it ain't happening this year, but let's kind of let's gear up those assets, get ready for next year, and let's make a splash. So next season we're a lot better of a team and a lot more ready to compete.
So I do think it means also that teams that are ready to look for guys and to bring guys in. So here's a couple interesting things that happened this week or over the weekend, Robyn, as I've been paying attention to things around the league. Number one, Mikko Rantanen may not accept Carolina's current offer. It sounds like they offered him over $100 million for 8 years, but he might not sign it. And if that happens, Rantanen's going right back on the trade block because Carolina's not going to lose him for nothing. And there are teams that would love to have a talented forward like him there. Another thing, Boston, just Don Sweeney's talking like he's going to sell. I think this window is now shut for Boston. And that's kind of crazy to think because they really mortgaged it out for so long. But I think the Bruins window is closed. Just like the Penguins window was closed. I can't wait to see who the Penguins are going to deal. Probably not Sidney Crosby. Don't get your hopes up. I don't think he goes anywhere. But
I love when someone tried to bring it up on the rumor mill like a month or two ago. Like, oh, Sidney Crosby going to get traded from the Penguins? Like, no, he's not.
Yeah.
Like, don't kid yourself or fool yourself into believing that will ever happen.
Yeah. And there's other big names out there that could be on the go. I know the Vancouver Canucks have had a fractious locker room. They had a terrible week. They're kind of panicking internally right now. The Buffalo Sabres have been open for business for a while because they're awful. And they have a lot of players out there. But Robyn, here's one I wanted to talk to you about. The St. Louis Blues, they're in a Utah position, right? I mean, they are in a spot where they're out, but not out of it.
Exactly.
And they're a team that I think wants to look to be opportunistic as well, but much like Utah Hockey Club, possibly might have a goaltender on the go because Jordan Binnington's name keeps coming up. Do you think Binnington is someone that let's say you're Edmonton, or let's say you're another team that needs a goaltender. Would you roll the dice on bringing in a Jordan Binnington? He has won a Stanley Cup, whereas John Gibson has not won a Stanley Cup in Anaheim. I would pick Gibson over Binnington, but
it's
that's
a question
to ask.
It is a question to ask. Do you want the experience or do you want, someone who's a little bit more, I guess, who's been proven to even try to lift bad teams.
And the Blues, the year they won the Cup, the Blues were a bad team. That's why Binnington got called up in the first place. They were terrible. I think it was January 3rd, and it might even been a little later than that. They were dead last in the NHL. And then they went on a heater and ended up winning the Cup. So, Robyn, I've got one name I want to throw out to you here, and it's a name that has not been on the radar, but all of a sudden just started popping up, and I want to get your thoughts. Let's do that in a minute. Tom Callahan, Robyn Leaño here with you on the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast. Please subscribe if you like what you hear. You think we're entertaining, tell your friends. Give us the old thumbs up on YouTube. Helps us with the algorithm, and it also helps you find great hockey content as well from our Locked On family of podcasts and beyond. So thank you very much for being a part of the show. We appreciate it. You can get us anywhere you get your podcasts. And hey, if you can't watch us, you can always listen on the go as well. All right, so there's a big name that has started to surface on a team that I think is not 100% happy with itself or settled with itself, and this is a little bit of a surprise. They are indeed located in the Los Angeles metro, but Robyn, it is not the Anaheim Ducks. It is not Trevor Zegras, but, and this is interesting to me because he's still so young, but just doesn't seem to be fitting in with the LA Kings, and I'm talking about Quentin Byfield.
Ooh.
And Byfield is a guy who I think would look real good in a Utah uniform.
You would, and if we're kind of going based off a conversation before the weekend, does feel like he fits that kind that what was the term? Dynamic.
Something dynamic. Yes. And fits into the plan, the long-term plan. He's only 22 and a second overall pick in 2020. But the thing is, and there are other teams, obviously, that are at the front of the line for this guy. Vegas, Edmonton. But here's the thing. You have to give up something to get something for Quentin Byfield. You know what I mean? And so 55 points last season, but Was he going to take another step forward this year? Hasn't. I don't know. I'm interested to see if Quentin Byfield moves. Does he move in the West? Does he not move in the West? Where does he end up? I'm real curious. That's going to be a big one to me.
It will be a big one. And it's, what's interesting is every now and then we do get these like surprise names that kind of come up. Not necessarily, maybe not surprise is the right term here, but what we see is these names come out, I guess, almost last minute. You hear it, all of a sudden the trade deadline comes up, like starts heating up, and you hear this player isn't happy or they're not, feeling the most comfortable there, with the scenery that they're experiencing in this city or whatnot. They want something different.
And him just being a younger player, I think, is why I was interested in that.
Yeah.
And I know St. Louis is going to be shopping a lot of their players. I just don't think any of them end up here. And again, I look back at the Buffalo Sabres. If Dylan Cousins or Bowen Byram, who are both still supremely talented young players with some team control, if they could end up on your team if you're the Utah Hockey Club, that would be amazing. A guy I wouldn't touch right now is probably Elias Pettersson for the Canucks. Just and this is part of this fractious Canucks locker room. They traded JT Miller because JT Miller was supposed to be the problem. Pettersson has been hot garbage for the last month. Hasn't managed more than 3 assists and just hasn't had multiple shots on goal in a game, I think, dating all the way back to the end of January. Like, he is just not showing up. There's a lot of questions about his effort. As a matter of fact, Elliot Friedman, very famous hockey analyst. If you don't follow Elliot, he's the one guy you should follow. You should follow Friedge.
Oh, yeah.
On every place he posts. But he even said at one point, he's like, I'm tired of talking about the guy. Like, the effort is not there. He doesn't seem like he's engaged. And I'm telling that as a cautious story. I don't want to see a player like that on the Utah Hockey Club.
Oh, absolutely. I was also going to make the joke, Tom. Elias Pettersson on the Vancouver Canucks, not to be confused with Elias Pettersson on the Vancouver Canucks.
They have an Elias and an Elias. And you know what? I confuse them. So if you do too, sitting at home wondering which one's which, just know that the Pettersson I'm talking about is the forward who hasn't been contributing lately. But there's a lot of interesting names out there. And Robyn, here's the other thing. We're going to hear, I'm sure, some guys, their names are going to pop up that we haven't even heard all the way along. Mitch Marner, because it's not talked about. But I guarantee you, if Mitch Marner decides he's not staying in Toronto and is not willing to talk about an extension with the Leafs, he's going to be on the block real fast. And it might not catch major wind until a deal happens. But that's why Rantanen is important. That's why Marner is important. That's why Vejmelka is important. Mm-hmm. Anybody who's got an expiring contract that a team wants to keep, if they cannot reach a deal with that player, they suddenly become trade capital. And so that is probably my most important takeaway for anyone listening or watching this show. That just keep that in mind.
Especially if said player is having a good year, their value is high. It's only makes sense. Like, hey, we don't want to we'd like to keep you. If we can't keep you, we're not going to lose you for nothing. So you're heading out. You're going to see a lot of that. It happens every year.
Yep, it does. And also keep in mind, the only team that can give an 8-year contract to a player is the team that currently has their rights.
Yep.
Everybody else in the summer or whenever will be able to offer 7. So the extra year of term is only available to the rights holders of the team. That's why you see guys traded 3 days before free agency at the draft, because some teams want a 3-day exclusive window.
Yep.
And try to tack on an 8th year.
Yeah. Sometimes you see those sign-in trades. Like you'll just see those and it happens.
Yep. Absolutely it does. Even though it doesn't really happen. No, it happens. So, Robyn, anything you want to add on here at the end for folks? I know we're going to be busy talking so much trade stuff this week.
Yeah, no, I'm just going to say be ready for a wild week, everybody. The trade deadline, when it comes to the non-actual on-ice activity, the trade deadline and the draft are some of my and the free agency. Those are my top 3 favorite days.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're going to bring back the Wild Card Watch on tomorrow's show. So don't worry. We'll update you on all of that once we get through the weekend here. So that regular segment will return. As I mentioned, we'll do it a couple times a week all the way up through the end of the regular season. But this week's going to be a lot of trade deadline focus. If you have questions for us or thoughts for us, number one, you can leave them in the comments here on the video, or you can reach out to us on social media. Robyn, where can they find the show?
You can find us everywhere on social media, on Twitter, now known as X, on Instagram, Threads at LO_NHL Utah, on TikTok, and on Blue Sky at Locked On Utah Hockey. You can find me on X at Robyn_Leaño. I'm also on Blue Sky, not a whole lot there, so I'm still kind of working on trying to get the transition over, but you can find me over there at Robyn Nice Time.
Cut the cord, Robyn. I'm on Blue Sky at Tom Talks. That's where you're going to find me. I am still checking the Twitter from time to time, but I'm just not on it regularly. So, but Elliot Friedman only has a bot on Blue Sky, which, by the way, I do follow. It's great. It just reposts all of his tweets. So it's like having Elliot on Blue Sky. It's kind of the same.
Love
Not
that.
really. Yeah. So, all right, everybody. Well, we appreciate you being here. Thanks for being a part of things. If you haven't given us a subscribe already, please do so. A like, a follow. Tell your friends about the show. And hey, again, I know it's coming down to the wire in the fantasy hockey world. So check out the Locked On Fantasy Hockey podcast. Maybe there's some last minute tips. Maybe somebody you could pick up down here at the wire. Maybe somebody who's going to get traded might be in a more opportune situation, maybe catching some heady power play time. So keep your ears posted to that. And we certainly appreciate you listening into our show. We will talk to you tomorrow, everybody. This has been the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast.